The girl only shouted to drive away a stray dog, but the Taliban soldiers decided she was trying to flirt with men. They called her a shameless girl. Terrified, the girl hid in her father's arms, but the soldier named Idris became even more aggressive. He wanted to take the 11-year-old girl away and make her his wife. The girl's father had no choice but to lie and say that his daughter was already engaged. Unexpectedly, that lie made Idris even angrier. Another soldier couldn't stand it any longer. He stepped forward and pulled Idris away. But things didn't end there. As Parvana's family walked home, Idris secretly followed them. Soon, he returned with a group of men and stormed into Parvana's house. They accused her father, Nurullah, of hiding forbidden books and of secretly teaching women to read and write. Using that as an excuse, they arrested him on the spot. Faced with this sudden disaster, the family was completely helpless. That night, they lit a small, faint lamp. They hoped that when Nurullah returned, he could find his way home by its light, but that hope was almost impossible. After all, in this country, there were no real laws. Women had no voice. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't work. Adult women couldn't even go outside alone, and they weren't allowed to show any part of their bodies. Parvana's entire family depended on her crippled father to survive. But now that Nurullah had been taken away, their already difficult life became even worse. The next morning, Parvana's mother, Fatima, prepared to go to the prison. She carried her husband's photo and a letter of appeal. But in this country, adult women were not allowed to go out without a man, so Fatima had no choice but to bring Parvana with her. They asked a fruit seller which road led to the prison. The kind vendor told them the way, and reminded them to take the old district so they wouldn't be spotted by soldiers. But as they walked through a narrow alley, they still ran into Taliban patrols. One of them stepped forward and questioned Fatima. Without a man accompanying her, why was she out alone? Fatima could only show her husband's photo to explain, but at that time, even keeping a photo was forbidden. The fragments scattered in the wind. Parvana ran after them, chasing the flying pieces. In a corner, she managed to gather the broken fragments back together, but her mother, Fatima, wasn't so lucky. The soldier insulted her, calling her a disgrace to her husband and to their entire people. The soldier even kindly warned her that if she dared to cause any more trouble, her husband would be punished even more severely. There was nothing Fatima could do. She could only let Parvana help her up and take her home. Dragging her injured body, Fatima lay down beside her little son. Maybe only the warmth of her child could ease the pain for a while. Parvana pieced together the torn photo of her father, but one piece was still missing, so she took a pen and drew her father's mouth herself. Without their father, the family's food began to run out. Parvana and Soraya left what little food they had for their injured mother, and for their young brother. Parvana decided to go to the market alone, but just because she was a girl, not a single vendor would sell her anything. Then, she was unlucky enough to run into a few young Taliban boys. They chased Parvana through the streets. While running, she dropped her bag on the ground. She didn't manage to buy any food, and even lost her wallet. But her mother and sister didn't scold her. Parvana couldn't hold back her tears. Life was just too hard. The next morning, Parvana stood silently before the mirror, holding a pair of scissors. Without saying a word, she began cutting off her long hair. Each lock that fell carried her helplessness toward life. Soraya slowly walked up behind her. She didn't stop her. Instead, she took the scissors and helped her sister cut the rest. Maybe letting Parvana pretend to be a boy was the only way to survive. At last, Parvana put on her deceased brother's clothes. Now, she looked exactly like a young boy. Parvana stepped outside again. At first, she felt uneasy, every movement stiff, her heart full of fear, but she gathered her courage and walked into a grain shop. The shopkeeper really thought she was a boy, and so, Parvana finally managed to buy food successfully. She ran out of the shop, full of joy. The fear inside her began to fade. At a crossroads, a boy suddenly pulled her into an alley. It turned out the boy was also a girl disguised as a boy, and she was Parvana's old friend, Shazia. From that day on, in this man's world, Parvana wasn't alone anymore. At last, she returned home safely with food in her arms. Her mother finally let out a sigh of relief. She couldn't believe the plan had actually worked. Even her little brother, just waking up, didn't recognize that the boy in front of him was Parvana. Parvana went into her room and looked at herself in the mirror. So many feelings filled her heart. As a boy, for the first time, she could walk proudly with her head held high. She could look strangers in the eye without fear. No one looked down on her just because she was a girl walking alone. No one stared in shock because she wasn't wearing a veil. She was still the same person, but with a different gender identity. her whole life suddenly felt brighter, and that was the cruelest irony of all. Parvana, now disguised as a boy, was eager to find her father, but Fatima knew it wasn't something that could be done easily, and it was full of danger. In an alley, she saw a mother and daughter trying to buy medicine because they had no male guardian with them. They were being whipped by Taliban soldiers. The cries of the mother and daughter pierced Parvana's heart like needles. Parvana found Shazia and told her what she had just seen. Shazia told her that if she tried to help others, she'd only end up getting whipped too. All they could do was protect themselves. They couldn't change anything else, though the two girls were the same age. Shazia had far more experience surviving in this cruel world. She led Parvana through a crumbling alleyway. Then, through a small hole in the wall, they crawled into a sugar factory. Together, they snuck into a warehouse. Shazia bent down, picking up bits of sugar scattered on the floor, but Parvana couldn't focus at all. Her mind was filled with only one thought: how to rescue her father as soon as possible. Shazia told her, "With money, a lot of things can be fixed through bribes." From that day on, Parvana began selling things from home at a small street stall. Shazia's words gave her a spark of hope. Her father had once taught her how to read and write, so she started helping people read and write letters on the street. Soon, a man named Razak approached her. He was part of the group of soldiers who had taken Parvana's father, but he hadn't taken part in it. He handed her a crumpled letter and asked her to read it. The letter said that Razak's wife had stepped on a landmine while on her way to her sister's wedding and had died. When Parvana finished reading, she expressed her sorrow for his loss. The man, who had looked so strong moments before, was now on the verge of tears. He quietly placed an apple on her table and walked away. Kind-hearted Parvana didn't ask him for payment. That night, a dim yellow light filled Parvana's home. Her mother had made a decision. They couldn't rely on Parvana to support the family forever. She decided to write to a distant cousin. She wanted to marry off her eldest daughter to the cousin's son, but only on one condition: that the cousin would take them away from this sinful city of Kabul until a reply arrived. Parvana still had to keep earning money for the family. One day, while she was at her stall, an old man came by and wanted to buy her precious dress, but he was only willing to pay 1,000 Afghanis. Parvana thought he was buying it for his granddaughter. To her surprise, the old man said, "It's for my wife." In Afghanistan, marriages between old men and young women were common. At that moment, Shazia showed up. When she heard that Parvana had earned 1,000 Afghanis, she said, "We could use that money to bribe the prison guards." Shazia then told Parvana that she, too, was saving money because she dreamed of going to the seaside someday. She wanted to feel the warm sand under her feet and the gentle waves against her skin. Parvana could picture it clearly. That kind of moment must be beautiful beyond words. If she ever had the chance, she wanted to go there with Shazia to make that dream come true together. When Parvana returned home, she handed her sister the things she had bought, then turned around and headed straight for the prison. The road was long and dusty. No one knew how far she had walked. At last, she reached the desolate area where the prison stood. She shouted her father's name at the barred window. She even tried to bribe the guards with the little money she had, but Parvana was too naive. The guard not only refused the money, he punched her hard in the stomach. Parvana fell to the ground, clutching her body. With no other choice, she dragged herself home. At home, her mother comforted her softly. Her sister washed her tired, bruised feet with clean water. The next day, Parvana found Shazia again. She told her that the bribe hadn't worked. Shazia guessed that it must have been because they didn't have enough money. Soon, they found new work carrying heavy loads for merchants. But after all their effort, the greedy boss claimed they were too slow. He withheld their pay and refused to drive them home as promised. Parvana and Shazia had to walk a long distance back. They passed through a battlefield. Broken tanks lay scattered across the ground. Tired from walking, they climbed onto one to rest. Their minds were still spinning, thinking about how to earn more money and how to make their dreams real. Shazia took out a small picture of a beach. It was the pure, peaceful world the two girls longed for. The next day, Parvana went back to her street stall, reading and writing letters for people as usual. Razak came by again. He apologized for not paying her the last time. Parvana smiled and handed him back his letter. Razak asked her to point out where his wife's name was written. Perhaps he just wanted to touch a trace of his wife one more time. Before leaving, he handed Parvana a thick stack of money. Gradually, the two became familiar with each other. Razak came to see her every day. Parvana taught him how to write his wife's name, and Razak shared his fruit with her. Through their quiet moments together, Parvana felt his kindness. She told him a lie, that her uncle had been taken by the Taliban. Then she cautiously asked if Razak could help. To her surprise, Razak agreed. He told Parvana to come to the prison on Wednesday. Parvana thanked him sincerely. To be safe, Parvana wanted to save a little more money. She and Shazia found another job, but at the place where they worked, they ran into Idris, the soldier who had arrested her father, and Idris quickly saw through Parvana's disguise. Parvana grabbed a brick and struck Idris with it. Furious, Idris raised his gun and started chasing them like a madman. The two girls ran for their lives. Fortunately, they spotted a cave on a hillside and hid inside. Just then, Idris's superior ordered him to leave immediately because the war was about to begin. Parvana had been waiting for Wednesday, and finally, that day came. She had to go to the prison to find her father. At the same time, her mother received a reply to the letter she had written asking for help. Her cousin said he was willing to accept the arranged marriage and would take them away from Kabul, but no matter what, Parvana insisted on seeing her father, at the very least, before they left. She wanted to give him his walking stick and let him know where the family was going. After saying goodbye to her family, Parvana set out. She first went to say farewell to her good friend Shazia. Shazia handed Parvana the money she had secretly saved, hoping Parvana would stay brave. Parvana and Shazia made a promise that one day, if they ever got the chance, they would go see the ocean together, but in a country torn apart by war. This goodbye might very well be their last, because war suddenly broke out. Fatima's cousin had to come early. He decided to take them out of Kabul before the city was locked down, but Parvana happened to be away. Fatima didn't want to leave her daughter behind alone. Yet the city was about to close its gates. Her cousin had no choice but to pick up Fatima's youngest child and use him as leverage. Helpless, Fatima had to take her two children and get in his car. Meanwhile, Parvana had already reached the prison gates. She shouted at the top of her lungs. Soon, a fierce-looking soldier came out, threatening her to leave immediately. Luckily, Razak appeared in time. Pretending that Parvana was his son, Razak told her that the war had broken out suddenly, and the prison was purging anyone who refused to go to the front lines. He urged her to go home quickly, but Parvana, determined to save her father, told him the truth, that she was Nurullah's daughter. Razak was stunned. He couldn't imagine how much suffering a young girl must have endured, disguising herself as a boy in this war-torn land, just to feed her family and rescue her father. Perhaps it was Parvana's persistence that moved him. Razak told her that if he hadn't brought Nurullah out before sunset, she must leave immediately and run as far as she could. From that moment on, every minute and every second felt unbearable. Watching the distant sun, Parvana wished it would sink more slowly, so that there might still be hope. Razak went back into the prison, checking cell after cell in a rush for Nurullah. Finally, he found him barely alive. He lifted Nurullah onto his back and hurried out, though he tried to stay calm. A Taliban guard noticed him. Razak tried to talk his way through, but the guard refused to listen. A confrontation was inevitable. Parvana stared at the last light of the setting sun, her heart sinking in despair. Still, without any news, she refused to leave. No one knew how long she waited, but at last, Razak emerged from the prison, carrying Nurullah in his arms. He had even found a handcart. He told Parvana to take her father and go. Without wasting another second, Parvana understood then. Razak had risked his life to save her father. Tears of gratitude filled her eyes. Elsewhere, the car carrying Fatima broke down on the road. When a passing driver helped fix it, Fatima made her decision. She would not leave. She had to find her daughter. She grabbed a burning stick and shielded her older daughter Soraya and her young son, telling them to run first. The man with them pulled out a hidden knife. Fatima seized the blade with her bare hand. The sight of her blood frightened the man. No one could truly understand how brave and determined a mother could be. In the end, the man let go, got back into his car, and drove away. Fatima quickly caught up to her daughter and son, and together, they started walking toward home. Parvana, too, pushed her father Nurullah forward, toward their long-awaited reunion. Under the bright, round moon, its light seemed to shine gently across Parvana's face. It was such a warm, tender scene. The world in this story is full of hardship, but Parvana's actions remind us that love and courage, like seeds, can grow into hope even in the darkest of places. May the strength you gain from this story help you face every challenge that lies ahead.